It's just like a Matryoshka doll of like Frenchmen, like all the way up to the top.
We're back.
This is Bookends. We do book reviews with a little extra.
We are reviewing The Finish Line by Kate Stewart.
This is going to be spoiler. The spoilers.
Spoilers.
What is this Finish Line book about?
Do you remember where we left off?
Wait, so this is the same thing where this is the throuple book where like this lady, she comes back into town. She's now a billionaire. You know, the French guy. She's still rekindling things with the Frenchmen, and they go to Washington D.C. and they're like the Illuminati. That's sort of where we ended up.
Such a good
Yeah.
summary. I didn't remember half that stuff. It kind of starts off, they're in Virginia. She owns a diner and works in the diner. And Tobias basically decides to move in with her, which I guess she's given a choice, but not really. He's just like, you know, you said we're going to work, so I'm going to move in with you now.
She can't really say no at this point. He currently controls the country.
It starts out with her like being really committed and is like, yeah, this is going to work. But then when she goes to work and has some distance, her doubts start to creep in and she's like afraid to fully trust him and love him again without knowing that he can be honest with her and treat her as a partner and all that, you know, basic human decency stuff. And she has a dog now, and the dog kind of doesn't like him. And so that's funny. And she also named the dog after his dad, and he was like, weird choice. But yeah, the dad's name is Beau, but it's like French, so it's, you know, has all the vowels in it.
Yeah.
Beau. And he's of course a Frenchie. He's a French dog because he's French. I think that's the theme of this
Nice.
book is France.
Yeah, my copy didn't come with the English translations, and it was really difficult to read.
Was this book really French though? This was written in English, right?
I mean, we can summarize the first 80% of this book pretty easily. It's this vicious cycle of she's like, you need to tell me everything and be honest with me and treat me like a partner. And he's like, I really want this to work. I can't tell you everything yet. And then he's just like pissed that she doesn't fully open up to him either, or like let him come sleep with her, basically, like most of the book. And then while that's happening, you also get a lot of time jumps back to Tobias's childhood till like the first book. Essentially, he has another person that he went into business with really early on when he was in France, and that's kind of what got his like mobster start. And this guy, he's in a totally different circle of underground crime.
He's like the number one French mobster.
And he basically is like holding Tobias. I don't know if hostage is the right word, but he's not letting him leave his circle of his mob. Tobias is like, I really, like, this was not supposed to be a full-time thing. I have my own shit in the States and I want out. And he knows that this guy's going to come back for him. And that's what he's keeping from Cecilia for some reason. But she knows that there's like some demons that he's not talking about.
Yeah, it's like she wanted to write a slow burn miscommunication trope after already having this like very hot and steamy relationship in all these other books. And it seems kind of forced. Like Cecilia wears flannel pajamas and that's her way of saying I'm not sleeping with you.
No, I mean, that says it all.
And Tobias runs through the street and is just like drunk in stupors. He's not handling it well.
Yeah, so Tobias, I guess, wants to prove to her that he can do the normal, simple life. And so he like takes a vacation from being the head of the Ravenhood and is trying to just be present with her. But it turns into him just like lounging around. He like goes to the diner and helps her and he does other cute stuff. But Cecilia is like, you don't have to not work. Like, I know that's who you are. And he's like, no, I'm going to prove it to you. And it's kind of like, she didn't need you to prove that to her.
That's not what she's asking. The whole thing was a miscommunication trope, the first 80%. It was very annoying.
So his family's from France and his birth father was still there. And he used to be this big protester slash activist, which they imply that that makes him shady, like he's done some shady shit. And because of that, he has family connections in France. And so that's why he goes to some like prep school there so that he can build connections in order to make this Ravenhood a thing. Turns out his dad has schizophrenia, so he's not really coherent anymore. So he sets his dad up in a home to get him help. And then he goes and tracks down a French mobster that learned from him and used his resources. The now president, he meets him at school. He meets his mother's dad, his grandfather, who teaches him how to play chess and like really teaches him how to, you know, run this empire.
This book goes into kind of the beginning of the Ravenhood, and it was all their parents that kind of would get together and start these conversations. And then Tobias eventually ends up taking over the meetings, ends up giving reign to Dom and Sean, and it goes over that kind of history. We should go over the because the end is the best part.
All right, what
Michael read
what?
the end, right?
So my reading here was I read the first 50% of the book, then I jumped ahead and found what seemed like the ending, seemed like some sort of action scene was happening, or some sort of conflict was finally happening. I also kind of skimmed this too. They like went to Washington and they met the president. Cecilia's talking to the first lady, and they're like, "Wow, look at our guys. They're like the most powerful men in the whole world." Blah blah blah. Then there's something else happens, and they are confronting Antoine, the other Frenchman, and there's some sort of confrontation, and then some sort of reveal, and it turns out it was all a trap, and they actually capture Antoine. I don't know. Maybe someone else could explain this better.
The best part is that Tobias kept secrets from Cecilia this whole time because he's trying to protect her, and she freaking knew. She knew the whole time.
Yeah, she was right.
Took over for Tobias in the Ravenhood because she's like, look, I have to prove to him that I can handle this. And they're like, yeah, this is ridiculous. We'll help you. She like sets Tobias up from the start, right? Like she lists a note. She has like a to-do list, and at the bottom, it's handsome man ? And that's like the guy who visits her diner, who is her dad's old business rival. He thinks that that's like a potential love interest. She knew it was that guy from the beginning and was like setting up Tobias and all this stuff. And so then those two get in a fight because Antoine hired the handsome guy. They like make it to the house. There's like a gunfight. It's actually pretty awesome. He like runs the guy over with the car. Go inside. Tobias and Cecilia get captured, but Cecilia like did this all on purpose. The Ravenhood and the FBI and everyone show up. Basically, they kill Antoine. And she's like, see, you can trust me. And then that solves their problems.
Yeah.
Okay.
It was all like a setup for Antoine. But the best part is that Tobias didn't realize it was a setup either. So he's just reacting to everything, even though everyone's on their side secretly. I also thought that he was gonna like sacrifice himself. That I was like, oh no. But as a reader,
we can't do another Dom.
yeah, I know. As a reader, the ending was cool because it was a shock, but I wish that they kind of like brought you along more. It was just a totally different 20% into the book than the first 80%.
In the end, they move to France and they have their dream home with their dog. They live happily ever after.
Yeah, he has this home that he built himself, and he calls it the finish line because he's like, I've never been there, but this is where I want to end up when all my work is done.
He gets like the Secret Service and the U.S. military to kill all of his enemies. It says over the next 8 years, they work together with like the CIA and like special forces, and they just kill all the other mobsters.
Well, that and apparently they cleaned up politics, so they got rid of all the corrupt politicians in like the Senate and the House.
Oh, they fixed the world. Okay.
As much as they could in 8 years.
This is a lot going on.
That's like our quickest summary ever.
Okay.
I made a third.
Third thing. All right, how about this? If you could rewrite one section of the book, which one would it be, and what would you do?
I would want to see more of Tobias's time hanging out with the guy who ends up becoming the president. Who is this person that you have somehow been able to like, convince 100 million people to vote for? And
I think I would change Tobias's decision to just be on vacation and just stay at home and be a couch potato. I think the book would have been more interesting if he was still active.
Like I said before, I think it would have been better if the reader went along in Cecilia's journey. I wouldn't have felt so disconnected, I feel like.
I'm gonna say I would kill off Tobias and Antoine take his place. That would be my twist. Like the people would be into that.
Wait, who's taking his place?
Antoine.
Antoine.
so it'd be like the end of the first book when Tobias,
exactly.
You thought it was these two guys.
Retribution.
It's just like a Matryoshka doll of like Frenchmen, like all the way up to the top.
She's just really going after the top Frenchman, basically.
I could summarize the whole thing. I think I got it.
Go for it.
All right, so we start out. They're hanging out in Virginia. It's pretty slow, you know. She's got a diner she's running, and Tobias is just moping around, and he moves in with her. We don't know really if he asked or if he just showed up there and just there. You know, it's kind of just like a strange roommate-like ex-lover relationship. He's kind of getting the cold shoulder because there's a trust issues, blah, blah, blah. He's getting drunk and just roaming the streets, and she's meanwhile doing other stuff that he doesn't know about at this point and doing all this stuff with the diner. And then flashbacks now to Tobias's childhood, which was great. It was really fun. And there's some mob stuff in there. He learned a lot of things. His dad was an activist, but he was shady. He's also schizophrenic. And then they have the Ravenhood and they start that stuff. Flash forward, there's this guy, Antoine, who's cool and everybody loves him and he's great and he's everybody's favorite character now. And he's out to get Tobias. He's coming back for revenge for some reason. Little does Tobias know that Cecilia knows about all this shit and she's been running the damn goddamn Ravenhood this whole time. So they go to do something with Antoine. I'm not really sure what, but they go to some sort of house. I don't know whose house it was. There's a gunfight of sorts. They get captured. Tobias and Cecilia are captured. It's looking grim, but no, bam, it was a twist. And Antoine dies somehow, and I don't know how, but he's dead. It was a setup the whole time, and then they move to France, and it's awesome. And they fix the Senate and retire. All right, well, this was good, guys.
What are we reading
Let's
next
see.
time?
This is how you lose the time war. Like some sort of like.
Okay.
This has been the Bookends. Bye, bye,
Yeah,
bye.
we just didn't
bye.
end it. We just didn't end it.
Bye. Like,
See ya.
comment, subscribe.